You know, great communities don't just happen. They always start with the sum of the people and their lives. Mary Templeton, who joins us today, and she has a large contingent of her family here in the room, including her husband, Rich Templeton, the CEO and chairman of Texas Instruments. Thank you for joining us. Margaret McDermott, whose daughter, Mary McDermott Cook, has joined us today, is also joining us on stage, alongside Ruth Altshuler, who I have already introduced as the First Lady of United Way of Metropolitan Dallas. This is a trifecta of leadership and community service. All three are big lives who have helped shape our community over the years. And these inspirational and accomplished women really need no formal introduction. They are all deeply rooted in and have had substantial shaping of public life and private well-being in Dallas, with decades-long philanthropy that now spans 2 centuries. And their collective 2 centuries of endurance, I can tell you, will outpace others who are half their age every single day. Each family and foundation has given generously, and United Way of Metropolitan Dallas has been a regular and grateful beneficiary. Each is part of the strong civic and cultural foundation that has positioned Dallas as a national leader. And we already know this, but it bears repeating. The McDermott, Altshuler, and Templeton names are synonymous with selfless giving, community advocacy, and tireless support of the betterment of humanity, and a deep and abiding love for the city of Dallas. Finally, they are all great friends of each other's, of many of yours, and to my great gratitude, of mine. They are not only civic leaders, but they're also the person you'd like to most join you for lunch. They sparkle and shine at every occasion with charm and authority, and we are so grateful that today it's our day with these wonderful women. I'll now turn it over to my friend Mary Templeton, who is going to moderate this fantastic conversation that we've all been waiting for. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I have several pages of notes here, but when Margaret arrived today, she informed me that she really doesn't care what questions I ask. She's just gonna tell us what she wants us to know. And so I'm really not sure why I am on stage, but I brought a timer. So I think I'm allowed to cut you off at a certain point. Is that all right?
No, that's not all right.
Jennifer sold this as we were just going to have a little fireside chat. And I'm thinking Roosevelt, 30 of them. He had a radio, nobody really had to see us. That was good. I was all right with that. And then she said, no, you're going to be speaking in front of people with our good friends. Just pretend you're at lunch with them. So we do talk over each other, and we do ignore each other at times. But I will say that the inspiration for today's fireside chat is from something Margaret once said to Rich and myself. Great cities don't just happen. It takes people with imagination, leadership, and lots of hard work. I'm honored to be joining 2 dynamic ladies that have been so instrumental in shaping our great city. These ladies are actually true living legends, and living legends don't just happen either. It takes a broader mind, a big heart, and an even bigger mission. And both of these women have answered the call, and they've led us through many, many decades of development in this city. Please join me in welcoming Margaret and Ruth Altshuler to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary.
All right, before Margaret just starts telling us what she wants us to know, I'm gonna let Margaret go first, which is a little off script here. So those of you that have listened to me talk, you're gonna say Mary's kind of ad-libbing here, which is bad. But Margaret, your family's contributions to the city are absolutely immeasurable. For those of us that live north of 635, You are the McDermotts of McDermott Road, which is pretty cool, okay? I'm sorry. More importantly, your family leaves the legacy of Texas Instruments. And I had to say that, Rich, okay? 85-year-old company, world-renowned, and over 30,000 employees, many of them in this room today. Thank you for joining us, Texas Instruments. Is that good? Yeah. Margaret, more importantly, your family has been a leader in every major undertaking in the city of Dallas, from arts to health to education. Could you share with us what you want to share with us?
Now?
I'm timing you though, okay?
Well, all I can say is this is not what I generally do because no one asked me to do this. And so here I am with friends, and people, and that's what I'd like to talk about. And maybe start back, if it's all right, to different decades that I've lived in and I've enjoyed, and they've been special. And if you don't mind, and let me say in advance, while I'm going to talk right now about the 30s and then maybe the 40s, it's not going to be more than 3 or 4 minutes per 10. So don't leave, it's not going to be a decade. All right, the 30s. And I kind of want you maybe to think back. You can't, anyone here in this room can't think back to the 30s when the whole world, including Texas, even Texas, was in a severe depression. And a severe depression was worldwide and certainly citywide. And in those days, it was 10 cents to go to a movie. It was 5 cents to have popcorn. And my job, and I did have a job, I'd gotten out of college, and it was wonderful to have a job, was society editor of the Dallas Morning News, salary $12.50 a week. So I was so glad to have the $12.50 and a job. And I do want to say that about many years later, when I was married in a much better financial position, the head of the Dallas News came to me and said, "Now, Margaret, it would be nice if you talked about society in 1930 in Dallas and now." And you know what I said? "You can't afford me." And you know what he said? "We'll give you a raise." So in any event, I'll move on to the 40s. And the 40s was completely different.
Can I interject here, Margaret? Because I practiced a sentence. Margaret, when she was 31 years old, joined World War II in 1943. And I just find this absolutely fascinating. She lived in Imperial India, and I would say it had something to do with the China-Burma hump that you guys were trying to supply China. And then you went to occupied Germany and occupied Japan, and you spent 6 years of 1940 in the war zone. So tell us about it, Margaret.
All right. The 40s were different. And still not many of you can understand how different they were. But in between the 40s Well, I was at home still working in the youth, liking it a lot, but Dallas was so different. People had gone away. They were overseas. They were in Europe, and they were gone not for 1 month, but 2 or 3 years. So it was a different place. But in between times that I went to overseas. I was at home, and I went dancing with my friend that happened to be maybe too old to be in the Army, Navy, or Marine. And we went dancing at the Baker Hotel. And anyone that remembers the Baker. It was a great place to meet people. And there that night, I met a young man who was in uniform, a Marine uniform, and I had known at the University of Texas. He was a Pi Beta Phi, and my husband was the same fraternity. And so his name was Carl, and he was a Marine, and he had just come back from South Pacific. And I said, "You've got to come out and have dinner with us." My mom loved people in the uniform because she has all her son is there. So Carl came out we lived in those parts time on Junior Street, and Carl came out, and Mother had a wonderful dinner for him, and we talked. And finally I said, "Carl, if you don't catch this next trolley, you're going to have to walk home." And Mother happened to come in and said, "Carl is invited to be at the guest house tonight." And Carl said, "You bet." So at any event, Carl did. And Carl stayed until he went back overseas. And that was about a week or 10 days. And every day of that week or 10 days, Carl was on the telephone calling all his Marine buddies. And finally, my mom came to me and said, "Margaret, you know, I got the phone bill." And she said, "It's $2,000.
Well, your $12.50 didn't go very far, did it?
And I said, "Well, now, Mom, what are you going to do about it?" And she said, "I'm not going to do anything. I just got a letter from Glenn, my brother, and he was in the Navy at that point, and he had just been to New Zealand, and he said the people in New Zealand were fabulous, and we're going to be fabulous." And she said, "If I can get as much food as Carl likes to eat, we're going to have Carl right here and give him the best vacation." Well, Carl did that. And when he said goodbye, he gave us a hug and a kiss and said it was the best holiday he could ever have. And so that was our reward. And it was not but months later that Carl's family wrote Mother and said how Carl loved being with us. And he was killed right before 1 week after he left us. And so in the letter was a check for $2,500. And as Carl's family said, Carl had made a Kelly in polka with the Marine. And so that was Mother said. All right, now. Now, believe me, I certainly missed everyone in Dallas, and I read so much about what was happening in Europe and the Middle East, and so I applied and was accepted to go to Germany. And may I say, for someone that had only been to Colorado Springs and maybe to Austin, Texas, that was pretty exciting. So I went to Europe for the first time, and there I discovered the terrible things of war. And in Germany, I landed to go from Hamburg down to Frankfurt, where I was going to stay. Every block of that German countryside, in the city and in the country, was devastated. At every cold, bitter railroad, people were wearing newspapers for one, newspapers for food. And I landed in Bad Nauheim that was not bombed. And there I was happy enough to be in a pension where the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful landlady, German landlady, Frau Rico, we would fix dinner for her German friends in her spotless German kitchen every night. And so one of the wonderful people that came was a lady named Frau Nobius. And Frau Nobius' husband had been, before the war, he had been one of Hindenburg's, who was prime minister there with the Tsar, and prime minister, and may I say that, number one, Frau Rico's Nobius tales, and one of her tales, because her husband been so high in Berlin society, was that truly in asking her husband about what he thought about America at that time, this German aristocrat, and the aristocrat said, you know, the thing is, so many of our best men have left Germany and gone to America. And there they went to a fresh, not so rugged life, and they have worked hard and they prospered. And now, Frau Nobius said, they're fighting against our country now. And then also, it was so interesting that truly, Frau Nobius once said that at one of the big balls, that Hitler, who was a sort of a newcomer, but an aggressive newcomer, came and kissed her hand. And she said, for the rest of the day, Frau Nobius said, she washed her hand again and again because she hated it so much. Now, it's sort of interesting to me, and here I'm going to skip a few decades, that truly my husband and I were in Fredericksburg, Texas, settled by the Germans. And there, my husband decided it was the time to restore a building, the old library that they were going to tear down. And it was restored with German help and German expertise, because they were still German at heart. that we came back to Fredericksburg for a weekend and a celebration. And it was a world citywide celebration. And truly, the whole town went out and there were big placards all over the place. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. McDermott. So, but one of the best things, the best one was we went to one of the fine ranches there, and there was a gentleman now in his 40s or 50s, very handsome in this fine ranch, and there were lots of German people there, and children there, and they were blonde and blue, thing. And so after, with the children we used the story, and finally they said, Miss Matt, why don't you tell a story? And I told a story about Frau Nobius. And at the end of the war, there were Germans who could not stand the fact they were defeated, and they were Cyprus. All over the place.
Cyprus.
All over the place. And they were so bad that the American Army had every pension restored, not restored, they were looked at, they were checked. And so this checking included the room where Frau Nobius, Frau Riso were taking care of the dying years of Herr Nobius. And Herr Nobius was unconscious at the time. And into the room came a GI. And he checked out the room, under the bed, everything. And by the table where this man was lying unconscious was a wonderful watch encrusted with diamonds. And the GI picked it up as another man came into the room. And this man was young lieutenant, blue eyes, blonde hair, tall, handsome. And he looked at the scene, the two ladies, the GI, the man died, and the watch. And the soldier showed the watch, took it out, he said to the lieutenant, good souvenir. The lieutenant looked around, and he looked, and he said, he saw the ladies, he saw the man die, he saw the watch, he saw the GI, and he said, put it down. And with that, he bowed to the ladies, saluted the old man, and the door closed softly. Now, as I call, going back years later to Fredericksburg, and see going to a ranch, and the young man, the kid asking me to tell a story, and I told that one about Frau Nobius. And as my husband and I left, well, the owner of this fine ranch came and took my hand and kissed it. And that's not exactly what they do in Fredericksburg. But he kissed it, and he said, Miss Matt, I was 23 years old, and I did go to Germany because I could speak German, and I too was in Bad Nauheim. And so that was my story there.
Thank you.
All right, after Germany, I was used and I liked foreign land. And so I was asked, invited, and employed to go to Japan. And that included going through the Suez, stopping in India, stopping in Singapore, and on to Japan. And so in Japan, I was not exactly the best journalist, and I was sitting toward the bottom as a journalist, and I could say that in Japan, one of the things I got up high, because we all climbed Mount Fuji. So, and then it was time to go to Texas. My father was blind. I wanted to come home, and I wanted to see what I could do for the family. And of course, there I met my husband, re-met him. And with that came the most wonderful years I could, and that included a whole lot of friends and people and Texas instruments.
Good job, good job.
And of course, in those days, and I'll tell you one thing, in those days, T.I. was just starting, and they thought they had a future ahead, but they were working hard, but they did sort of have a party every so often. And thank heavens they still do. So anyhow, in those days, I had a lot of people ask me to dance because it was the whole company that went to the ball. The whole company, and they had headquarters downtown, just a small apartment. Now everyone that I got danced with, all they could do was telling me how wonderful Mr. Back was. So, of course, I concurred with that, but also I think about Mr. Back, but I also think about Eric Johnson, and I also think about Cecil Green. But speaking of people, and I'm back to last night, just last night, I was at the concert hall for the Bush Library reading, and for dinner, I was the guest of Hannah Dow, who started that wonderful restaurant right here in Dallas, Rye, and right next to me on the other side was Mayor Mike Rollins. And to Mayor Mike Rollins, I said, how are you enjoying what you're doing now? And he said, it's better this year than it was last year.
Well, Margaret, that was a great segue over 50 years.
To last night.
I'm thinking about the audience.
I thought so. Should we let Ruth talk a little bit?
Well, all I can say is what I said to, and Mike Rollins said to me, please tell me about Eric. And I said, well, my husband said if there is any one person that deserves credit for T.I. as we are today, it's Eric. And that was the way they did it then, and that is the way this wonderful company, the ethics, the wonderful things they do for the city. And also, one of the Rich Templeton, you know him?
I know him. Good job, good job.
Did a splendid thing help United Way. And may I say, and this is in closing, United Way, and we went there on one of our adventures to see what's happening in Dallas with Jennifer, you and me, and we saw what was happening in United Way. And to me, and this is what Mayor Rawlins said to me, the wonderful things in Dallas are the people that work so hard, the people that have done so much, the talented people, the hardworking people, all over the United States, sure, but certainly right here in Dallas, you bet. And so, really in closing, I think I will say, thank you all, you friends, and I've talked about friends, and they are so important. Friends like Ruth, like you, like you. Thank you.
Okay, Ruth, you have 2 minutes. No. I was just kidding. You got 3. Okay, so Ruth, you know, I read up about these ladies just trying to get insight into what a grande dame of Dallas is, and many of you are sitting in this room. And if you Google Dallas style understated grace, literally the first thing that comes up is Ruth Altshuler. And it's an article that was done about you. And I thought, you know, you are incredible. And just your resume of accomplishments and honors reads like the grand slam of civic leadership and philanthropy. And it would put a Nobel laureate's resume to shame. I don't even know what to ask you, so I think what I'm going to say is, what would you like to talk to this crowd about?
What do I want to talk about?
Am I done?
Okay. Jean Whitman has helped me on some remarks, and I said, "What shall I say?" And she said, "Tell about your father." So I'm going to go into a little more serious side. This was the most interesting. I just was hanging on your every word. And anyway, my daughter is very into Albert Schweitzer, my older daughter, and she became the head of the Albert Schweitzer Institute in this country and was given an award in Boston at Harvard for her work with Albert Schweitzer. So she said, "Mother, you just brought us up on Albert Schweitzer quotes. I didn't realize I had enough to do that." But one of his quotes was, "Example is not the main thing in influencing others. It is the only thing." And I love that because I think that's just so true. We are all just influencing each other every day, our families and our friends. And so I was thinking who had influenced me the most. But I had the perfect mother, so we'll stop with that. And then we'll go to my father, who's not quite so perfect, but very sharp, very poor boy, sold apples on the train in South Texas and newspapers on the corner in Beaumont, and finally got enough money to go to college 1 year at San Marcos. They changed the name of that school so much, I don't know. Lyndon Johnson went there. Anyway, my mother, they met there, and she was able to go on 4 years, but he had to drop out. But anyway, they married and moved to Dallas, and he was in the insurance business. And mother took him, they were about 25 years old, and she took him to the First Baptist Church. Now, none of you in this room are old enough to remember Dr. George W. Truett. In those days, the churches were downtown in Dallas, and the First Baptist Church and Dr. Truett, everybody there just thought he was God. He'd come out in a frock tail coat and a Herbert Hoover stiff collar, And he'd say, it's more blessed. I remember, the more blessed to give than to receive. And then he'd say, pray for your sins of omission as well as commission. I was 40 years old before I knew what that meant. I finally figured that out. But anyway, so she had my husband going there. I mean, her husband, my father. And Dr. Truitt saw in this 25-year-old man a very outstanding, that this youngster could be a very outstanding man. So he asked him to be a deacon in the church, which was such a big honor. So Dad, of course, said yes. And they were rooming. Nowadays, when people get married, they live in an apartment usually, or maybe even buy a home. But in those days, you boarded. Some widow needed to have a little money, and she'd rent out a bedroom. So they boarded in Oak Cliff, and they'd ride the streetcar across the viaduct and go to the First Baptist Church. Well, Dr. Truitt said, we're going to have a capital campaign. I thought, were they doing it back then? Anyway, they were doing it back then. So then he said, I want all the deacons to come up and sit on the front row, which they did. And then Dr. Truitt said, I want each one of you to stand and say what you're going to give to the campaign. We've never thought of that, Jennifer. So Dad stood up and said, I'm going to give $5,000. Well, in 1915, that'd be like some of you smart business. Would it be
Rich?
500,000 or something? No, that's too high. Rich, what
it's
would
probably
it be?
$1 million. Yeah, that's a lot.
Well, anyway, it'd be a lot of money now. So, anyway, well, I've forgotten what I was going to say. So Dad said that, well, Mother was just, in the back row just gasping. So when it was over, she cried all the way home on the streetcar, and she said, we don't have $5. Where do you think we're going to get $5,000? And he turned to her and he said, I'm going to the bank tomorrow and borrow it. And I thought, to have your father go to the bank as a 25-year-old man and borrow the money to give to the church, I better get out there and do something worthwhile. So anyway, that was the story that Jesus.
How old were you, Ruth, when that, 4?
Well, I was not even born, but they were.
Oh.
No, this was when they were about 25. And this is 1915.
Wow.
What else do you want me to tell?
Do you want me to go back to my notes?
What? The Kennedy.
Oh, actually, I have a good segue
Okay.
for the Kennedy
A
work.
lot of people. All right.
Okay, in 1964,
Okay.
Ruth, after Kennedy's assassination,
Yes, okay.
acting mayor and former TI CEO, Eric Johnson, began working to change the community's image. His plans were called Goals for Dallas to Shape a City. And as I understand it, it was like a 400-page manifesto. It was huge. And I think they're actually still working on it today. I think the Trinity River, I think the Trinity River was part of it. You knew back then. I kid you not, because I read part of it. Ruth, what can you tell us about that time? I know you were
I was on the committee and I don't remember one thing about it.
Good answer.
I was already into SMU, I think. Anyway, but you wanted me to tell about the Kennedy. A lot of people, when I speak, which is not very often, but they say, tell about the Kennedy assassination. And so what I know about that, everybody knows. I was at the 6th floor just a week ago, and this woman who runs it, Nicola, said there were 40,000 books on Kennedy. Imagine. Many of them were down in the 6th floor in a library. But I had a little personal touch with all of that. I went down to see my mother every day. She lived behind us, and one day I was down there and the phone rang, and it was Joe Dealey of the Dealey newspaper. I said, how do you know where I am? But anyway, he said, you're going to get a subpoena, and I wanted to warn you that the sheriff's department's going to deliver a subpoena. We have just met. We want you to be the first woman in Dallas to be on the grand jury. And I barely knew what that was or what it meant, but anyway, here came the sheriff, so I did it. Well, it ended up being the fall of 1963. So we had nobody knew anything was going to happen like this. And so we met every day from 8 to 12 or whatever it was. I think now they have more than one grand jury. They may have 2 or 3 or 4, I don't know. But so at noon on the November 22nd, I left the records building and crossed the street to the book depository. And my husband, Charles Sharp, picked me up, and we went under the viaduct, whatever it was, and the triple underpass, and got to the Trademark where the luncheon was. And so there were maybe 1,000 people there, and Eric Johnson presided that day. He was president of the Citizens Council, which sponsored this. So everybody sat down. And we waited, and we waited, and we waited. And finally, the press ran in. Must have been 50 or 100 of them ran in. And I thought, oh, well, they're finally here. And then they ran out. And so I saw Joe Dealey was standing there with a transistor radio. That's what they were using in those days. And he told me later, I wanted to tell you what I was hearing, but we were afraid of the panic in the Trademark. I don't know what he thought everybody was going to do. No one was going to panic. But anyway, they didn't tell anyone. And then Eric Johnson goes to the microphone and said, I'm so sorry to inform you that the president has been shot. He didn't say killed, he said shot. And then will Luther Holcomb get up and give the benediction? And he did. Well, then we all walked out so quietly, and by the time we got our cars, the word was out that he was dead, and the women were weeping and all that. So anyway, that was and then our judge, Judge Joby Brown, was the judge for the Jack Ruby trial. And he said, do you want to come to the trial? And I said, yes. And I was like, the New Jersey housewives or somebody. I, of course, wanted to go to the trial. Charles.
That was good, Ruth. That was good.
What?
New Jersey housewives.
Charles Sharp said, I wouldn't go to that trial if it were in the next room. I said, he didn't ask you, he asked me. And so anyway, I was sitting out. I took Betty Lou Williams with me. She died a few years. Anyway, we were sitting in the lobby of this building. It was in the records building. And the courtroom's still standing. I understood they were going to do it all over and kind of recreate it. But so she and I were sitting there. I was sitting with Ms. Oswald, the mother, on one side and the wife on the other. And they would bring him in, and Jack Ruby was about that tall. And anyway, I'm getting way off of everything. But what I was going to tell you, and then I'll end this part of the program with, when I have a letter here that Jack Kennedy wrote his girlfriend after his boat had been sunk. And no one's ever heard. I read this letter to the Charter 100 one time. But the girlfriend was a friend of mine. And I got, when her son, who's now 50 or 60, heard that I was doing this, he sent me a stack of letters that her mother had written Kennedy and one letter that he had written her. It's a copy, of course, but I just wanted to read you a little bit. Because it's something that, none of us know, that what Kennedy, a 25-year-old boy who just had his PT boat sunk out from under him, I'll cut it short, but anyway, it said a few weeks after the Japanese sank Lieutenant John F. Kennedy's PT boat 109, leaving 2 crew dead and 2 others badly injured, he wrote to his friend, and then she was his girlfriend, journalist Inga Aardvark. Now that's not the letter, that was introducing what it was. Inga Aardvark, if you got some of these 40,000 books, half of them are going to have Inga in the index. And I knew her because my daughter was dating her son. And it was all, anyway, she was the most amazing woman. She's the German. If you read all these books, they'll say he was going with a German spy. the German spy was Inga Aardvark, who's about as German spy as I was. But she did. She was a journalist from Copenhagen who went to Berlin during the war. And Hitler gave her the first interview, the only interview he'd ever given a woman. And he took her with him to the Olympics in 1936. And then her mother called her and said, "You get home immediately," like any mother would do. So she got on the train to go back to Copenhagen, and she told me herself that she would, that they stopped her at the border, they weren't going to let her through. And they opened her suitcase, and on the top of the suitcase was a framed picture of Hitler. And it said, "To the great Nordic beauty, Inga Aardvark, Adolf Hitler." And they let her through. So then she came over to this country and roomed with Kennedy's sister, Kathleen. They were both journalist students at Columbia University. And J. Edgar Hoover called Mr. Father Kennedy and said, "You better get your son. This woman is the spy. You better get him away from her." So they sent him to the Pacific. I thought the father, when for 10 days they thought he was dead. And the father would think, "I sent my son over there and he was killed because anyway, where were we? Okay, I just want to read you a little bit of this letter. This war here is a dirty business. People say that beating the Japs may take years and millions of men and billions of dollars, and we get so used to talking like that thousands of casualties sound like a drop in the bucket. But if those thousands want to live as much as the 10 that I saw on my boat, we'd better be able to say it was worth it when we reach that goal. I got a letter today from the wife of my engineer who was so badly burned that his face, hands, and arms were just flesh. I was able to swim and help him. I think Kennedy helped one of them, pulled him to this island or whatever with his teeth. They got a little rope around him, and I don't know, anyway, it was a terrible time. He said, I was able to swim and help him. His wife thanked me. She said, "I suppose it was just part of your job, but my husband was part of me, and if he had not made it, I would not have wanted to live." And there are so many who don't come through. Another boy on my boat, 24 with 3 children, stood next to the bombs, and they bombed on either side, but they didn't get him. And he said he hardly ever spoke after that. He told me he thought he was going to be killed. I pushed him to go ashore to work, but he wouldn't. The whole thing is so stupid. War has a sickening fascination for some of us, but I just want to leave it far behind. And he said, I feel so bad about it. If anything happened, oh no, I want to go, last paragraph. I used to have the feeling that no matter what happened, I'd get through. It's a funny thing. Now this is a 24-year-old boy whose boat's been sunk in the Pacific. I used to have the feeling that no matter what happened, I'd get through. It's a funny thing that as long as you have that feeling, you seem to get through. I've lost that feeling lately, but as a matter of fact, don't feel badly about it, because if anything happens to me, I have the knowledge that if I had lived to be 100, I could have only improved the quantity of my life, not the quality. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
So anyway. Now it's her turn.
Ladies, before I open it up to David, if anyone has any questions, I just want to kind of bring us full circle. When asked to moderate, I actually struggled trying to think of relevant topics to ask you. I'm not sure why I even thought of topics. but the reality, the reality is that when I started to think of relevant topics, it's really hard to think about what to talk about without pandering the United Way story. And the reason is that you both are the United Way story. United Way of Metropolitan Dallas wouldn't be here, it wouldn't be what it is without you, especially the Tocqueville Society. You cannot have a conversation about United Way of Dallas without talking about either of you. Always leaders in giving, and more importantly, you share your vision with others to make the mission successful. You are the lifeblood of this great city. and you've provided us an incredible legacy for all of us to continue. And Margaret and Ruth, Rich and I would like to thank you. You set an incredible example, and we understand and we accept the torch, and hopefully we can continue your legacy of having a bigger heart, a broader mind, and an even bigger mission. And that's it. Thank you.